I've seen a lot of performances where the actors are in tears and I'm not. And there's that wonderful quote about, the good drama is not when the actor's crying, but when the audience is. If the audience doesn't understand the story, then they're not going to like the production. And in independent theatre, where a lot of actors get their experience, there's a very high percentage outcome of badly told stories. The simple fact is, if you don't have a story to tell, you don't need actors. It's as simple as that. And it's interesting that despite the fact that story is so important, that in fact, if you look back through the history of acting, very few of the major acting teachers in their literature, in their books, actually give much reference to it. It's not a high priority, whereas I think it's the major one. Okay? If a story doesn't have a reason to be told, if it doesn't have a purpose or a theme, it's actually not a story, it's a list. Right? A story without a reason to be told is a list of events. The first stage is understanding what the story is. And then the next stage is understanding how your character fits into that story. And I don't care whether you've only got one scene in the whole film. That character is relevant to the overall development of the story, because if it's not, what's the point in it being there? It's when you channel the things you're trying to find out towards the development of the story, that's when you not only engage me with the performance, but you engage me with the story. What happens is, if there's not a story, and actors don't know their place in the story, what they try to do is be interesting. Right? And so they do this thing to be interesting and that thing to be interesting, and in fact we're bored because we don't get the story. Yes, so actors need to be able to align their purposes so that they are delivering story. And you can have two good performances that in themselves are very real and believable, but actually neutralise story because they're not unified in pursuing the content and the purpose of the difficulty. So, it's not just about performance. In fact, there's probably stuff you've seen where the performances are not that shit hot, but the story's really good, and you go with the story because the story is engaging even though the performances are so-so. Story is king. The rehearsal room focus has always been on story. And actors say to me, and they demonstrate it, that they're the hardest choices to make. It's very easy to make choices about how you feel and what the relationship's about, but what the conversation is really about is the hard thing. And so rehearsal room workshops have been working towards that focus, but recently there's been a workshop that works on not only doing that within the scene, but doing that within the whole screenplay. And that's the Delivering the Story workshop. And it takes Uta Hagen's ideas and the generalities that Stanislavski talks about and turns them into a manageable process. And what we've discovered in that, it's really interesting, is that if you put a different theme or premise in place for the movie, then you're going to do something completely different in the scene. And that the point of the story is the thing that's going to drive the actors' choices about what they're doing in the scene. And it makes big changes, and it's fascinating to see.